It says we're live, and at this point in time, we don't have anybody in the room, so I guess we won't say anything too important. Got to give us a few minutes to catch up.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Looks like we've got 3 people in, but guys, sorry we're a little late. I've been having tech issues, so just getting here. So I see Chase is there. Chase, can you hear me, man? I'm assuming you can hear me. He can hear me, Marlene, but
I can hear you, but I didn't hear a response from anybody.
yeah, they're just chatting over here in the sidebar. I need to show that there. Hopefully
I'm
that'll.
trying to get a little better background for myself here. Get that light out of my way. I'm going to do this. We'll flip right around.
There you go.
There we go. That's better. No doubt. Hey, cool. All right. Anytime you're ready.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get after it. We got a few people here, so a few of my group members are here: Chase and Scott and Mike. Appreciate you guys tuning in. So I was connected with Marlene through Philip from Distillery Acadian. He came over and seen you guys, and he and I were talking, and I was mentioning that I needed, some other contacts. He's like, I've got some people you need to talk to. I hadn't a clue about. I hadn't even asked you how to say Milam or Milam and Greene. Like I didn't even know, right? And
right.
But man, I mean, luckily enough, I reached out to you, and you connected right back to me, and we were able to get some of your whiskey in my hands, and I have really enjoyed it. So I'm really eager to talk to you tonight, learn a little bit about you, learn a little bit about the brand. When he mentioned, your name to me, obviously I didn't know who you were, so I went researching and
nice.
Was very impressed with your resume per se, but I don't.
We're just quietly over here doing our thing, Brandon. Not a lot of big waves, and what have you, but yeah, just kind of a behind the scenes kind of person that just quietly goes about what I know to do.
Well, you're doing it well. I mean, Texas whiskey has a name for itself, and some like it and some don't. And for me, Milam and Greene and Still Austin are 2 of the ones that I really like, and some of the others I just haven't become too fond of yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, whiskey's still young in the state here. The oldest distillery here, I think, is about 17, 18 years old. And so, folks, I think it took a little while to figure some things out, the climate being the big thing, distilling and aging down here. But yeah, there's some good distillers here. And Texas has its own taste profile. There's no doubt about that. Little different taste coming out of Texas on the bourbon whiskey side of things, but that's all right. To each his own. Everybody has their own palate.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean it goes the same for barbecue or anything else, right? You travel around, it's all different. And
yeah, exactly.
That I've really, grown to appreciate is, when we talk age statements, we're always pretty relative to Kentucky. We say, I'm not paying that for a 6-year whiskey. You're saying you're not going to pay that for a 6-year Kentucky whiskey because you're not really understanding what a South Alabama, South Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, they all age differently and a lot more rapidly, exponentially more than Kentucky or Indiana. And I was talking with Fred Minnick about that a few weeks ago because he was on the Bourbon Pursuit podcast and they were talking age statements coming back, but everything they were talking was Kentucky whiskey. And so I presented that to him. He said he was going to do a little thought on it and get back to me. So
yeah,
but it's something to consider, the whiskey
absolutely
does age differently.
Yeah, that's that's an excellent point to bring up on that, Brandon. People early on with us, gave us a little bit of grief when they found out that we was blending, a 2.5, 3-year-old whiskey with older whiskey. They were like, why are you doing that? But, it's different taste that you have from that young whiskey. And when you take some younger whiskey and you batch it up with a 6 or an 8 or even a 10 or a 12-year-old, you come up with some really, really beautiful whiskeys by doing that. And, that's who we are. That's been our MO from the beginning, is, again, we got a lot of grief early on because we were sourcing some whiskey. And, but the thing of it is, we've always had grain to glass whiskey as well. We just embrace a lot of different things out there, and blending whiskey and taking great whiskeys and batching them together to come up with a really beautiful whiskey is kind of what we're all about. So we've just stayed true to who we are, and we just keep chugging along.
I think you're all doing great. And I guess tell me a little bit about the very small batch. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything about, what you guys have done with that one, but to me, it's light on the palate, but it's got a ton of flavor. It's nutty. Like, it's got the mouthfeel that I like. It's my jam, and anybody listening knows what that is for me. But I didn't know what to expect when I got the bottle, and
Yeah.
I immediately fell in love with it. So does that follow suit with some of your distillate and some that you source blended together?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. This very small batch come about actually about 2.5 years ago. Our distillery manager, Rick Monroe, was doing a little experimenting, and is what we've done with this very small batch. And I love the term that it's loaded with flavor, because that's what people, I've heard a lot of people refer to the very small batch as a real flavor bomb when it comes to whiskey. But we take a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old whiskey basically, and it is our 5-year-old Kentucky whiskey. It's our mash bill. It's our yeast strain. It's our sweet mash. It's got that malted rye in there. So I love to hear that you say you get some nuttiness out of it, because I've took raw, well, not raw, but malted rye, just the kernel before it is milled up, and just crunched around on it, and you'll get a little bit of nuttiness out of it. So, so is what we do with this. This is a 5 and a 7-year-old whiskey that we batch together, and then we take our rye whiskey that is finished out in port wine barrels, and we break those barrels down once they're emptied, and we toast the outside of those staves, and we do it all in-house here at our distillery. And then we take those toasted staves and drop them down in the tank with the whiskey that's already been mingled together, the 5 and the 7-year-old, and we let it sit anywhere, for a few weeks up to 2 or 3, 4 or 5 months. It just depends on, when it's ready to dump, when that taste profile gets to that point, that we're looking for. And we decided on 108 proof. There was various proofs that we experimented with, and we just liked that taste at 108 proof. So that's what we stuck with. And it's been a really big hit for us. Glad you enjoyed it.
I would love to see it at Cash Drink just to see, and obviously you guys didn't prefer it there. Maybe that's not where it needs to be, but that thing it's loaded with flavor. I don't know if anybody that's watching, if they've had it or not, but I'd love to hear from them. But for me, when a whiskey is proofed down, a lot of times I feel like it can get too watery, and some people like that, right? Some people like a real light sip, and that's okay. There's a time and place for it. Personally, I like something that's going to have a good bit of flavor to it, and so a lot of times on the lower proofs, if it's been proofed down, I get a little nervous, like, oh, is it going to be? It's going to be too watery, and this one it's spot on.
Right.
Did you guys go in the barrel at lower proof with this one, or with the barrels that you mix together? Are they consistently like lower proof entries, or do y'all go?
Well, the barrel proof entry on ours is 115 proof. So we do drop down, and we do that on all of our barrel entry is all 115. I think the Texas heat here is a little bit too much. If you go much higher than that, that's where you'll really get a lot of astringent taste. That a lot of people, some people like that. They want that. It's not what we were looking for. So we dropped that barrel entry proof down. On the Tennessee side of things, to be quite honest with you, I'm not real sure what the barrel entry proof on that side would have been. Now, my guess is it'd be 125 proof because that's what most distilleries do. For bourbon is 125, but yeah, we do the 115. But yeah, we just dropped it down, like I said, to different proofs, and that 108 was just that. Was just at that flavor that we thought was really nice, and that's what we decided to go with. And we kind of do everything around here, majority rules, we by committee. We get everybody that we can here that's a part of Milam and Greene involved, and then kind of go from there. What folks like best here, because there's a lot of whiskey. All of our people are passionate about whiskey. They're whiskey lovers. And so that's what we go with, and that's kind of how we decided at 108 proof.
Gotcha. I think that the lower proof entry on the barrel, from what I've been reading and learning, is scientifically it's the better way to go, in my opinion. It seems like the water with the distillate interacts with the barrel differently in a chemistry format, as opposed to adding the water to the aged whiskey on the backside to proof it down. So I think it does, especially in this heat, yield a better flavor. So Detling, my buddy Seth at Detling, he does the same thing, right? The extreme Alabama heat there, black houses, and he goes in with a lower proof. And obviously that costs you guys more money because now you're going into more barrels.
Right.
In the end, I think it yields a better flavor because it does get aggressive with the 125 and everybody wanting to hit that max entry point, and
sure.
Everybody want to try to come out hazmat. And I mean, I have hazmat whiskeys that I love, but I'm starting to learn that the number on the proof doesn't really tell the whole story. It doesn't tell the whole story, and nor is that what you really need to aim for, and it tickles me because a lot of these guys that are collecting whiskey, and I say collecting because most of them don't even drink it.
Yeah.
They want that hazmat, right? Give me
Sure.
the highest proof number you can get, and in some places that's good. Broad Branch is doing it well. That their 141 proof Big Winston is phenomenal, and it doesn't drink 141 proof, in my opinion. But then you come back down to 108 proof on something like this, and it's just as delicious. So it's teaching me a lot.
Right. Yeah. You've just got to go with your palate and what you like. Brandon, I did a barrel pick with a group out of San Antonio here at the distillery back. It's probably been 4 or 5 years ago. And we had 6 barrels laid out, and I knew the proof on the barrels, but I didn't divulge anything about proof wise because I didn't want to sway their opinion away from their taste. And, but the proof on one of them was 98 proof. And I tasted the barrels before we pulled them out. I didn't know the proof on them at the time, but I tasted the barrels at the time, and they were really, really nice barrels. That's why I elected to lay them out for those guys to taste. And, they ended up choosing that 98 proof barrel. And when I told them what the proof on it was, they was like, holy cow, we will not be able to sell this. And I told him, I said, but guys, that's the one, you guys not knowing, that's what you like best taste wise. And I had that store manager come back to me a few months later, and he said, that was one of the best selling barrel picks we had. People were skeptic of it because of the proof, but they were tasting people there in their store. And so once they tried it, they loved it. Yeah.
I think that's the number one thing. I think every store should be allowed to do it. And obviously, I know there's rules and regulations and over-serving people and so on and so forth. It gets kind of crazy, but I think every store should be able to taste people on certain things, and that's where you're going to sell me. If I can come in and try it, because I'm 100% try before I buy anymore,
Yeah.
unless it's somebody that I drink with and we have very similar palates that they tell me, hey, that's one you need to get. I'll trust it. Otherwise, I want to try it, and I think that's what I was going to say earlier when you were saying they have a hard time selling it. They need to do the customer the same way you did them. Try this. I'm not going to tell
Right.
you what it is until after you try it.
Yeah. I encourage people to blind taste our whiskey all the time against other labels out there. And I told a guy that one day, and he said, "So you would put your whiskey up against Pappy?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'd put my whiskey up against Pappy." And I said, "The only reason," and I don't say that meaning to be cocky or anything, but I think we've got really great whiskey. But it goes back to your taste palate, and what you're going to like. And, more often than not, our whiskey will hang in there with a lot of the big labels out there. I've had hundreds of people come to me over the last, 5 or 6 years that have done blind tastings with people. And it's ours wins out more often than not. It's just, letting people try it and not knowing, what they're trying. So they have no bias against any way, shape, or form of what they're tasting, other than it's just whiskey there,
I
so.
think mines are the real truth. I think that's the way to go. And, I tell people the labels, the bottle, all that, the story, all that's cool. But first and foremost, I want to try the whiskey. Just put it in the
Yeah.
glass, don't tell me a thing about it. And then if I like it, I'd love to know what it is I just like. Give me the
Yeah.
mash bill, tell me where it's at, give me the story, all the good stuff. But people will go out there and buy those Pappies because people say Pappy. And, I have a Rip 10. I really like it. I'm not crazy about wheat, but I've had the Pappy 15. I liked it. The 13 rye I liked. And recently I tried a 20, and I've had Dasani water that drank better. And I was honestly pretty
Wow.
disgruntled about that. And
Yeah.
you're in a blind that particular day in that bottle, this 108 Milam and Greene would drink it under the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy to me how that goes. And then you got the flip side when you're pricing your whiskey, because like my buddy Matt at Crittenden started out, with really, really cheap whiskey, but he's making it out of great stuff. He's putting his heart and soul into it, and he has some phenomenal whiskey. Won several double platinum ascots here recently.
Nice.
Now he's struggling to raise the price of his whiskey because people's like, Crittenden whiskey shouldn't be that. But
Yeah.
should it or should it not be? All costs have gone up, right? But
Sure.
you've got people that'll go out and pay these absorbent amount of monies for a Pappy and may end up disappointed if they were crack it and drink it. And then you've got people that don't want to pay, good money for like a Milam and Greene.
Right.
And I think y'all's labeling, your packaging, your bottles, I think all that sexy, appealing. I think that it could be from the biker bar all the way up to the suit and tie bar. And I just think it's a diverse product and I'm anxious to try more of your stuff.
Yeah. Well,
We had a question. Somebody was asking about the mash bills on your actual whiskey, on the bourbon and the rye. They were wanting to know what the
yeah.
mash bills were.
Yeah, so on the mash bills, and when I refer to our mash bill, we've got pot stills here in our distillery that we run, and then I go back to Kentucky with the production crew, and we go up there 3 or 4 times a year and make whiskey with the guys up in Bardstown. It's the same mash bill. Everything's the same. So our mash bill is 70% corn, 22% malted rye, and then the balance there being 8% malted barley. And it's a sweet mash. And then we use 2 different yeast strains that we mingle together. So we do the exact same thing in Kentucky that we do here in our pot stills here in Texas. And, you mentioned a while ago about the barrel cost and the entry proof, and more barrels needed if you go in at a lower proof, and it costs you more money. It absolutely does cost more money, but to us, it's all about what goes in that barrel. You know, the old saying is, you put crap in a barrel, you're going to get crap out of a barrel. So that's why we malt our rye. You know, most people use raw rye, but we have been for almost 8 years now been using malted rye because it opens that cereal up, gives you a little more flavor. So we elect to spend a little bit more money on that front end. And then going back to the barrel proof, you know, we dropped that barrel proof down because here with the heat in Texas, the influence that the climate has in the aging process, we wanted a little more water on the front end to kind of soften things up a little bit. And sure, there again, it cost us more money to do that, but the quality at the end of the day is what we're after, is what, you know, what we put in that bottle, you know, is all about the quality there. But yeah, our mash bill's pretty consistent.
Appreciate that. You know,
yeah,
we need to know that what makes this whiskey so good. Well, the things we just talked about. Okay, well, those things cost them more money, and they're not going to take that on the chin, right? So they're putting more cost into a whiskey to make you a better whiskey. It's going to cost a little bit more than what you would think, right?
right.
A lot of times we don't know that as consumers. We don't really, just like double barreling whiskey. Like if you go in low proof, you're using more barrels, and then if you decide to double oak it, you're
Yeah.
then going in new barrels, so that's even more money. So those are costs that we as the consumer need to understand, and we need to be okay with paying. But I think a lot of people just miss out on that.
Right. Yeah. You know, and it's barrels have gone up. You know, everything has gone up. Grain, glassware, the barrels and all. You know, all that expense has absolutely gone up. But like I said, we stay true to who we have been from the beginning, and we work with what, you know, we have to work with. And again, it's, you know, it's all about the quality of what goes in that bottle at the end of the day is what we're after.
What cooperage, and do y'all typically use 53s, or do y'all flirt? I see some small barrels back there. I've got a couple projects going now as well, but
Yeah. Well,
predominantly.
now, yeah, these small barrels that we have back here, these are little 5 gallon, or they might, no, those aren't even 5 gallon. Those are 2.5 gallon barrels. Is what we do. We finished our old fashions out in those. So those are old fashions that are barrel aged for the tasting room here. But traditionally, all of our barrels in our rick houses are 53 gallons. Now, we do have a handful here and there of 30-gallon barrels that we work with, but that's like probably less than 5% of our inventory is those small barrels. We've just elected to stay with those 53s, and they work well for us. You know, again, going back to the climate here in Texas, you know, you gotta baby these barrels here. That's one thing I found out pretty quick when I moved down here, that, you know, you got to stay on your toes when it comes to the aging side of things. But, you know, things move a little quicker down here because of the climate that we have. And the 53s work great for us. As a matter of fact, a lot of our Kentucky barrels, when we have production runs there in Kentucky, we'll leave a good portion of those barrels in Kentucky. We always bring a few of those barrels back to Texas with us. But even the barrels that we leave there in Kentucky, we may only leave those barrels there a couple of years. And then we bring them here to Texas for another 2 or 3 years. And that's, you know, what I mean by that Texas finish. You know, it's amazing at how it'll change what's in that barrel after it sits here 2 or 3 years, like our wildlife series. That's pretty much what our wildlife series is based on. We generally come out about every quarter with a wildlife series. And those are all barrels that have been barreled and aged at a different location for either a year or two, and then we move them here to Texas for the next 2 or 3 years to finish out. And they have just been amazing. The finish that we get on them after we bring them down here. The proofs generally go up on them. The color, like we've got one now that's 5.5 years old that we've had here now for almost 4 years. And if you didn't know better, if you didn't know that it was a 5.5-year-old whiskey, if looking at the color of it, the proof on it, and the taste on it, you would swear it was an 8 or 10-year-old whiskey.
For sure. And that's the whole thing with the South versus, Kentucky, because when we say a 5-year whiskey, we're thinking a 5-year Kentucky whiskey and what it should look like, but it's just not the same. And then talking about those different size cooperages, like the smaller barrels are just exponentially faster, right? I mean, I'm doing the little 5-liter barrels and did some White Dog in it for 35 weeks and kept it in the basement at 70 degrees for 25 weeks, put it in the heat for 10, and it's done.
Nice.
Some old Granddad in the same size barrel in 13 weeks. It's done.
Cool.
I think the math that I ran said that, like, in a little 5-liter barrel, 2 years would be the equivalent of 15-year whiskey in Kentucky. So, you put something in a small barrel and in Texas or Alabama, Mississippi heat.
Yeah,
it's going to happen quick.
Yeah, it's a different animal down here. There's no doubt about it. And all along the coastal, you're right. The southern part of the states down here, it's just quite different. I realized that pretty quick when I moved down here. I'm originally from Kentucky. I spent 27 years up in Kentucky with Jim Beam, and left there to come work with the folks here 7.5 years ago. And so I learned pretty quick that it was going to be a little different animal to have to deal with when it comes not only to the distillation and fermentation side of things, but definitely on the aging side. As a matter of fact, I've got some samples, and I meant to send them to you, Brandon, and I'll get those samples to you. I don't know if you've heard or not, but Heather and I, the whole crew, we've had an experiment that we've been working on for about 5.5 years. We did our first run up in Kentucky back in the fall of 2019. And we barreled our distillate there in Kentucky, left half of the barrels in Kentucky, and we brought the other half to Texas. And they have been sitting here in the heat in this climate for over 5 years now. And so we have done a comparison, a climate experiment, and on the difference in Kentucky aging and Texas aging. And we called it the answer. As a matter of fact,
my friend Ashley just said that she would love to try that. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. There's that gives you an idea. It's a beautiful wooden presentation, 375 bottles. I don't know if you can see there or not, but 1375 is the Kentucky distillate. The other is what was aged here in Texas.
I want to send that to Fred, glass to glass, and let him see the differences.
Yeah, but I've got some samples that I'll get in. Have FedEx to you here in the next couple of days, and I would be curious. But the name of our experiment was the answer. So everybody had these questions about, well, how's the climate? I had folks back up in Kentucky. Well, Marlene, how are you dealing with the climate down there, the aging process? Well, we've got the answer to that. So, and it changed it all the way around, Brandon. Visually, the color is deeper on the Texas side.
Whiskey, is it?
What's that?
It's probably not even the same whiskey.
It's two different. It is. It's two different tastes. It really is. And it's a pretty cool experiment, though. And it's not saying that one's better than the other one, or one's right or one's wrong. It's just, there again, we want people to have an experience. Yeah. And we want to also hopefully educate people a little bit about, you was talking about adding water on the front end there on your barrel entry. There's a lot, like you said, a lot of science behind that. So we love for people to have an experience, and we want to let people know how we're doing things and why we're doing things. And so, the cool thing about this is that the Kentucky side of things is a little lighter, a little fruitier. The proof dropped down on the Kentucky barrels. The proof went up on the Texas side. The color's very much more of a deep amber color. And then that taste.
Further into that barrel, all that.
Right. Exactly. Very, very quickly moving in and out. So, but the really cool thing about it is when you get down and you have just a little bit left in each one of those bottles, blend those together. Play around a little bit with blending the two of them. And it goes back to what I was, talking a little bit about at the beginning about how, we take our different whiskeys and we blend them together. And, we've been doing that, our triple cast. That's exactly what that is. The very small batch is a blend. Our unabridged is a blend we put together also.
I think blending is a beautiful thing. I think sourcing whiskey is a beautiful thing. Obviously distilling whiskey is an art that I surely appreciate. I like to the max because it's cooking, right? Like it's not an exact science like baking, but still there's a lot to be respected there. I don't know that I could do it, and I would be scared to death to distill on a pot still because I feel like you can so quickly scorch the whiskey. And I think I'd probably steer more towards column whiskey in my preferences. But when you get into all the blending and stuff, it's like you guys or you ladies are taking all those nuances out that we don't really like about the whiskey and smoothing it out here and bringing it up there. That's another art that I would love to have the opportunity to sit with y'all and learn how you do that.
Yeah.
And Nancy's going to Broad Branch next week, and I was invited over, but I can't go, and I'm trying to catch up with her at 7-3, but I would love to sit with her and get her take. I really want to come out there and sit with you guys. And I think that's amazing is what to do with blending whiskey.
Yeah, there's you're right on. You hit the nail on the head there with it being it is as much an art, and I think it took the folks here in the U.S. a long time to realize, Europeans, they have been blending whiskey for years, for many years. They've been blending and have beautiful whiskeys, and it got a bad name here. For many reasons, people were doing really crazy things when they were blending, adding, foreign agents and things to give it color and taste and what have you. And it got kind of a bad rap. But you see a lot of places doing that now. A lot of distilleries are blending their whiskey, and it just offers you so much more opportunity as to what you put in that bottle, other than just grain to glass is great. We've got grain to glass product, but play around with it. And the pot stilled whiskey is a different distillate taste coming off of those stills. And then up in Kentucky on those column stills, you've even got a more different. It's a different taste there as well. And then the aging up there. And but it's quite something. Heather is our master blender. Heather Greene is our master blender here, and her palate is just amazing. It just and I have so enjoyed
all around. I feel like females have better than males, and I feel like y'all can pick up the things and articulate the flavors a lot differently than we can.
Yeah. It's been pretty cool for me to be able to work with her and to see, how she goes about the blending side of things. But there's definitely an art there to that. But I encourage people, if you can get your hands on, our only regret with this, the answer experiment that we did is that we didn't make more of it than what we did. But, that's, again, is kind of who we are. Heather's she's not only our master blender, but she's our CEO. She runs this, she's the captain of the ship, so to speak. And she's always had that attitude about her, as, why not? Why not? Let's try something, a little bit different. And she's always had that attitude about her here with Milam and Greene. And that's, our portfolio, you can see it up on the back bar here, right here, that barrel head up there. Our portfolio, our labels is very small, but it's very diverse. I mean, we've got something there that if you're going to love. Anything from proof wise to blending to grain to glass to rye whiskey, you're going to find something that you're really going to enjoy.
I think, with the whole sourcing whiskey, the thing that intrigues me is the way that some of the people that are sourcing whiskey can go in and source a 1, 2, or 3-year-old whiskey out of Kentucky or Indiana or wherever, and kind of understand that, what, that's got promise. I'd like to either age it here, take it back to where I'm at and age it, and you end up with something good. I think Nashville Barrel does a great job of that. I think Short Barrel does a good job of it. Onyx and Amber out in Colorado is really doing a good job with it. But I think that's a scary thing. It's the biggest downside to whiskey, in my opinion, is having to wait on it and see what the outcome's going to be. But distilling it and aging it at your place is the same outcome. Until you know that you've got a good process going.
Right.
But I have a ton of respect for the sourcing and the blending. But I really, switching gears on you, would love to hear a little bit more about your earlier career with Jim Beam and how that's grown to where you are today, because I don't have a lot of data, or I haven't done a whole lot of research on your time back in Kentucky.
Yeah. So I started in Kentucky back in 1990 as a third shift distillery operator, running the column stills there on third shift. As a matter of fact, my crew would come in on Sunday nights, and we would start the facility up. And I spent 28 years there doing a variety of different jobs. I have crawled inside those stills and help clean them, do maintenance work on them, or not so much maintenance, but inspections on them. You've got all those trays in a column still. So I've literally crawled inside those things to do inspections on them. The grain bins, same way, back in the 90s when I first started with them, a lot of the light maintenance type work was done, by the operators. And so, I've been in bag houses, grain bins, done a variety of jobs, worked in the bottling house. I've worked in regauge or in the dump room where we would bring the red whiskey in that's already been aged and dumped it and, proof it and get ready to send it to the bottling house. I've proofed down whiskey for barrel entry. And I've repaired barrels. So, there's not a lot in the whiskey side of things, that I haven't done. And there at Beam, but I spent 27 years there, and kind of got into the business because I was in a career that I wasn't real happy with, and was looking to do something a little bit different, and actually had an opportunity to go to work at Jim Beam. And I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty interesting job. I didn't know anything about whiskey other than what whiskey tasted like, but really didn't know anything, about the process. I knew it took grain and water and yeast, but beyond that, hell, I didn't know anything about the process at all. And, but learning to run those big column stills, and, I was always one that I didn't sit still very long. I was always going back through the fermenter house, raising the lids on those big 50, 60, 70,000 gallon fermenters, sticking my nose in them, seeing how they were coming along, putting my finger in them to taste them. So I was always curious about those kind of things, and, how the process worked. And and then had the good fortune then to meet Marcia And Marcia Milam is our founder. That's the other half of the label there. And I had the good fortune to meet Marcia through a consultant that she was working with back a few years ago. And she needed a distiller. I was looking to do something a little bit different. And so our paths crossed, and was given the opportunity to come down here. And it's been pretty freaking amazing. Actually, it's, not a lot of people can say that they're in a job that they sincerely love to do. And,
That's success, in my opinion.
Yeah,
working every day in your life if you love it, right?
Yeah, exactly right. As a matter of fact, I had somebody to ask me today, how much longer are you going to keep working? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really look at this as work. I look at it as something that, I enjoy chatting with people, talking to people, doing tastings with people, and bragging about who we are and what we're doing. And
it's just such a beautiful thing in the way it connects you with people and how it brings people together and what it does for people. And that's one reason that Jimmy's still in it, right? Like, you would think by now he would have given it up and went to the house, but I mean, he will never. He'll die right there doing it.
He's getting ready. I think if I read someplace in the last few days, getting ready to turn 91 years old. Right?
I mean, something years in the business. I mean, that's just wild.
I know.
I can't imagine having a job at Jim Beam of all places. I mean, I can't imagine some of the whiskeys that you've drank from over there. Like they have put out so much amazing whiskey in their time, right? So what a blessing for you.
It was, I got to see a lot of changes, in the business. When I started back in 1990, there wasn't a lot of automation. Most of operations was very hands-on. Like, we had to make several trips a night, 4 stories up the column still to check out, the reflux or the temperature or the flow, at the top of those column stills that we had. And the big fermenter houses, fermenter houses there were huge in size. We had 19 fermenters at the time, and 50, 60, 70,000 gallon, fermenters. And so it was very much hands-on. If you needed to add a little steam, you actually put your hand on that valve, and gate valve, you'd open it. Or if it was a click valve, you would open or close it. You made those adjustments by hand, and so through the years, through those 27 years there at Jim Beam, I saw, automation come into play. And, a lot of it is done, they've been in the business for 200 some years. And so there's a lot of automation there now. A lot of the time is spent in control rooms, operating off of computers. And that's cool too, because that's the age we live in nowadays.
Well, it makes you more efficient. So I work offshore on an oil platform, so very similar situation. And just about everything's automated there. We can just about run that platform from the beach. Obviously, you still have to have some operators on deck to we do some things, and some people to change out transmitters and valves and such. But I keep thinking of my background in the oil industry and how it could relate to some of these larger distilleries, and maybe that's a career path for me down the road. I don't know.
There you go.
Am more on the side of I just want to be a promotional type of brand for multiple brands, right? So I love the smaller brands, and I just want to stay on the side of networking with people, drinking good whiskey, and connecting brands with people, and getting people's whiskey in other people's glasses. Speaking of that, Mark Brown was asking if you guys were in South Carolina. I don't know if you are, but I do know that you guys have online sales, which I don't know where all that reaches, but
So we are
distribution.
So good question, great question. So we are in 19 states. South Carolina right now is not one of them. We are in the process of moving into Louisiana right now, so we're just gaining some traction. But we do have online. If folks go online, they can order Milam and Greene from our website. We go through a third party to make that happen. So But around the South Carolina area would be Georgia, Kentucky, would be the closest states that we're in, if somebody would want to pick a bottle up. But like I said, you can always go online as well.
Do you guys currently have people doing barrel picks there? I'm not familiar. Like stores coming in doing store picks or groups doing barrel picks?
We do. As a matter of fact, I did a store pick with a group out of Nashville a few days ago. It was the middle of last week. Wednesday of last week, we had some folks in and we did a barrel pick with them. And we do allocate so many barrels. We set so many barrels to the side every year and to have for store picks. So we can make that happen. Absolutely.
I've got a couple stores in Georgia that I work with that I'll be seeing over the next week. And I'm definitely going to, I'll get your product in their hands.
Cool. Nice. Interesting.
I'd love to see them do a barrel pick with you guys. And that's something else that I do. We luckily we're working on getting Crittenden into Georgia for the first time. And there's so many stores calling for it right now that, I mean, I don't think Matt can do all the paperwork to get it done, but if we can get him into Georgia, that's going to be a huge move for him. So that's something else that I enjoy doing. And a few of the ladies and guys in my group.
Yeah.
As well. So
yeah,
just networking, right? But
right. Well, you guys are, kudos to you, Brandon. I tell people any part of the spirits business, especially in particular the whiskey and bourbon side of things, get into it, because to me it just seems like everybody, it's an interesting business to be in. The people that you meet, it's just fabulous. And I'm sure I'm very biased about being in the whiskey business because it's what I've done for 35 years. And but I encourage anybody that's thinking about it to get into it. But we appreciate and depend a lot on folks like you, Brandon. We're a little independent distillery, and so we depend on folks like you to help us, to get our word out there to people about who we are and what we're doing.
I lost can you still hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, let me change I guess my headphone went dead or something. I just lost you on my side. I don't hear a thing. Tech.
You gotta love it.
I'll let you answer this question while I fool with this, but somebody was asking what role does the oxidation play during your blending process, especially when you're combining other barrels. I'm assuming because you guys are in vats, it doesn't, but they were wondering about that.
Yeah. So, well, that's a really cool question to ask because I'll go back to this, the experiment we did with the Kentucky and the Texas side of things. We used 15 barrels total. And 7 of those barrels were Kentucky barrels, and it took 8 barrels for us to be able to do the Texas side of things. So, the loss down here, up in Kentucky at one time, back years ago, the loss up there was around 8 or 10%. From what I understand, it's less than that now. It's generally around like 4%. So my guess is 2 things. The barrels are being made, put together. Maybe the quality there is a little better than what it used to be, or the distillery is doing a better job about going in and looking for those barrel leaks and getting them repaired on a pretty quick basis. But yeah, the loss down here in Texas, generally around 10 or 12%. So it can be pretty significant. And, we don't climate control anything here. We just we put those barrels in our rick house. We let them sit there and we let them do their thing. Now, we did ventilate our rick houses pretty well. We've got vents in the top of the rick houses. And then also we raised the sidewalls up on our rick houses. So we've got about 10 inches or so of ventilation all the way around the bottom of our rick houses. So we've got airflow pretty consistently, in those rick houses to help hold the heat down somewhat. But yeah, you've got that loss, and it's something that you just have to work with and expect to happen.
I see that Mike, Big Chief of the Whiskey Trip, just tuned in. He said my friend's getting together talking whiskey without me. So he's been huge for me. When I first started, he reached out and kind of steered me on the right path. But
yeah,
you're familiar with him as well, huh?
I do. I know Mike. I've chatted with him. Hell, anytime I go to Houston, it's like I turn around and there's Mike, and it's like, hey, but he's fabulous. He's great. He's been here to the distillery a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, to chat with us and drink some whiskey with us. And Mike's, that cat, he knows some people in the whiskey business. There's no doubt about it. He's been around the block several times.
He has connected me with so many, and that's probably just a few of who he knows.
I don't doubt it.
And if I ask, hey, do you have a connection with so and so, and he get a phone call, so it's great. Matter of fact, one of the guys that's on right now, Mike, Mike Santola met up with Big Chief not long ago, and I wish I could flash a picture of them up right now, but Mike's shorter than I am. I'm pretty short. And then obviously Big Chief is as big as he is. So it was pretty funny to see. As somebody had asked earlier, I don't know if I can scroll back through these questions. It's not. Somebody had asked what the biggest challenge was for you, leaving Kentucky, coming to Texas. And I mean, we talked through some of that, right? I mean, just the heat and the difference in aging. I like to say that aging whiskey in the South is kind of like searing a steak at 1800 degrees versus smoking a butt at 180 degrees, right? Like,
right. I hear you.
Low and slow, and we're searing the heck out of it down here.
Right.
Were there any other challenges for you other than climate?
That was probably that was the biggest challenge that we had was the climate. Dealing with that, like I said, pretty early on, within a few months of being down here and putting whiskey in a barrel and then going out, at 6 months and pulling samples and seeing what the color of that whiskey was at 6 months old, at 8 months old. It was like, holy cow, this is something much different than, what we dealt with up in Kentucky. And that was probably the biggest thing, being from Kentucky, I didn't have a lot of the networking folks maintenance wise that I had there in Kentucky. Like, I knew groups that would put fermenters together for you, that were boiler repair people or inspectors or what have you. So all that, was relatively new to me down here. I kind of had to feel my way through that. And I relied on some of the other distillers here around me to help me, guide me with that. But, everybody was very open arm and very, again, it goes back to, with whiskey, there's just a different culture. I think that's one thing that kind of drew me into it from the beginning. It's just such a different culture as to anything that I had experienced in any other, careers that I had been in. And I had actually, been in a couple that was very, very different than the alcohol side of things. But
I think the motorcycle world is the closest thing for me, because it seems like all walks of life, similar to whiskey, can come together, and it doesn't matter, where you're from or what political stance you have or anything else. It's all about riding bikes and hanging out, drinking whiskey. And
absolutely.
I found that the 2 mics. I don't know if that'll.
Oh my gosh! Oh yeah. Right. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But going back, whiskey always, at the distillery back in Kentucky, we always had music. There was always a radio someplace in the background playing some music, and there was always food. That was one thing about, being in this business. If everything's running well, if you walk in a distillery and, people are just kind of looks like they're just kind of hanging out, so to speak, that's a good thing, because everything's running the way it's supposed to be running. If you walk in a distillery and people are running around, something's going on. Something is not cool. Yeah, but so we had time, when the equipment was running well, which the majority of the time it did. Hell, we would have big meals. All the shifts, different shifts, first, second, third shift. We would cook meals, and we would eat really well. But that just seems to be something in common. Like here the other day, we grilled out hamburgers and hot dogs for the staff here at the distillery. And anytime you walk in our distillery, you're going to hear some music in the background. So, it's just that kind of culture that is about the whiskey business, especially when you get around the distilleries and what have you. That's just, it's really nice.
What drew me to it for sure. We're getting close on time. I do have another question as far as the difference in climate and fermentation as opposed to aging. How does it change on the distillation and fermentation side of things? Is it more rapid there too, or
yeah,
are those differences?
Well, you better really bulk up your chill systems, here in Texas, because it's just much hotter. So you've really got to bulk up your chill systems, and the elevation, the altitude makes a little bit difference, and where you're running anywhere across the U.S. It makes a difference into when your distillate, starts coming off of those stills. So the cuts are a big, very important. But, to me, it goes back to just the chill systems and making sure that you've got enough chill water that you can put on those fermenters, those mash cookers, those condensers on those stills to make sure that you're pulling those tastes off and that you're getting the hours on that beer during fermentation that that you need to get. Longer is better than shorter. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're at time. I don't want to keep you all evening. I know you've had a full day of it, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this with me. And I know we played tag back and forth trying to get this thing together. So I'm glad it worked out. Tonight was no simple feat with tech issues on my side, but I appreciate your patience and talking with us.
Well, I've enjoyed it, Brandon. Absolutely, I've enjoyed it. And like I said, I've got a couple of samples that I'm going to shoot your way. And as far as the answer, and I look forward to hearing what your comments on those would be.
That piqued my interest. The fact that y'all did that, I hate that I didn't know you were doing it. I wish I could have been involved in it.
Yeah,
the biggest things, the biggest points in whiskey I'm trying to make right now.
We've had so many people ask us, why hasn't somebody done this before? Why hasn't somebody? And I think it just made sense that we did it because we were distilling up in Kentucky and we're distilling here and we're aging in different locations. So to us, it was just kind of, why, again, it goes back to that why not thing, why not, let's do this. So it's 5.5 years. That we've just patiently been sitting back and letting this whiskey do its thing. So it's been pretty cool.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Marlene, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. We'll do it again, Brandon. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Appreciate you.